Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück zu einer weiteren Folge Age of Witch on the Holy Night. Oh Mann, irgendwie ist das so ein Ding, dass ich ständig die Spieltitel durcheinander bringe, habe ich so den Eindruck. Das ist nicht gut. Ja, wir waren ja gerade mitten im Kampf von Aoko und Flat Snake. Ja, das Ding hieß Flat Snake, glaube ich, war das. Und ja, sie hat ja sich quasi gerade etwas überanstrengt beim Schuss und sieht jetzt wahrscheinlich Dinge, wenn ich es noch richtig vom Ende der letzten Folge im Kopf habe. Ja, da ist wieder Something approached one step at a time. Something from among the park shadows. Something. 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 She felt goosebumps from her head to toe. The issue was no longer the eyes overhead. In the midst of the stillness, the red death drew closer, step by ominous step. Her circuits in her mind began to rupture out of terror. The composition of her formula and soul began to rip apart. That was just behind her. Its footsteps came to a halt. It reached around and cupped her face in its blood-stained hands. Greetings. She wanted to scream out with all her might. This is it. Nothing matters. I couldn't care less. Run or don't run. It doesn't matter. Quit hiding and reveal yourself. Use whatever you can and show no mercy. That was it. She had one final card to play. Once, a miracle had been gifted to her, almost as a joke. It made the eyes look like child's play. That was what the Red Death had come to kill. Using it would spell ruin. Not using it would mean death by ice. Then why hesitate? There were no conditions on its use. There was no price to pay for its power. She simply would cease to be herself. That was all. Humans love to exist in areas of grey. Dozens of electrical impulses disconnect in the brain every minute. Nothing lasts forever, not even oneself. It was not anything particularly worthy of disdain. It was not even anything remarkably worthy of being called taboo. What escaped her lips now was rage, bewilderment from the red silhouette. The girl let out an inaudible scream. Could true magic truly be a savior, but an opportunistic load of bull? After all, to begin with. Indeed, Aku was still in the dark when it came to that magic, whatever it was. Oh, das ist gerade sehr geil. She woke from her momentary hallucination. The very illusion her breaking soul and had shown her. Whining had the opposite effect on her. Her pride was now ablaze. Cedric was right. Her opponent had put her in check, but she had done the same to it. It was clear why she was losing, so now all she needed was a counterplan well within her abilities. No matter the odds, she was not one to give up without giving it one last shot. Her numbed fingers clenched into a tight fist. She was betting against the house, an unreasonable gamble that should have made her question her sanity. If her first step was off by an inch, her body would be instantly vaporized. But She knew a boy who never fled. She knew of a steadfast coalition that could shine its light, no matter how small, through any desperate situation. Yes, there was more than just herself to be concerned about. If that ice fate, it would mean the destruction of the park in its entirety. Everything he had achieved, everything he had risked and dared and happily put his life on the line for would all be for naught. Oh, wie geil! Determination and confidence surged through her like electricity. She was in no mood to be crushed by a giant sheet of ice. If she was going to lose, she'd rather do so as the grandest firework possible. Argo was a sore loser. At this point she would rather burn herself to cinders than let it decide her end. The plant error reconnect. She grunted in pain. Energy raged through her body. Her circuits were on the verge of disintegration. Incredible, inscribed upon her body, her magic crest was mage god given physical form. It did not, however, stop with simply skin and flesh. It burrowed to the very marrow of her bones. A playful smile graced her lips. Her sense of reason had been turned upside down by the pain. That was only natural. She had to praise her own body for holding out so long while pushed beyond its limits. The sky face noticed the abnormality. It finally recognized this challenge for dominance over this place. It laughed at the conceited it faced. Never did it expect a magician to challenge the great flat snark, lord of vessels over a millennium, and in such an age of decline. Oh, das sieht echt richtig sick aus. She tried to catch her breath. She braced herself for the coming pain. She was going to smash that ice to pieces. Both had access to the same amount of magical energy. One of them was greatly outmatched, but... Boah. The feedback would go beyond anything she had experienced to date. Quite simply, her decision went beyond recklessness. She expanded both formula to maximum size. The first layer would transform into a giant vortex rolling up the mist. The second layer would process it from one end and pump it into the barrel. Das ist richtig geil gerade. Primal willpower answered the spellcaster's convictions. It formed the pattern of a writhing serpent, voiceless magical power through a banner of revolution. Now look upon the earth, O venerable one. See now this pioneer, this first among trailblazers. She embodies a species that knows no fear, that renders not all manners of mystic and tradition. For the newest magician command, the principles of consumption and extinction. An aberrant bullet of light melted through the castle of ice. The barrel held fast. The control of magical energy was divine. 100,000 miles of veins, equal to 2.5 times the circumference of the earth, hungrily drank in the magical energy. The subsequent magical strike hurtled straight up at the moon. Death rose from the moon's surface. A cry of indignant terror echoed through the abandoned park. Reality was burned into the eyes of this creature of fantasy. To Orko, its vain struggle was the taste of victory. Victory despite the absolute reckless use of magical energy. The energy scales had been tipped to their breaking point, but nevertheless in her favor. Black Hole? Uff, ey. Also ich sag mal so, der Park wird das nicht überleben. Shatter, shatter, shatter. Shatter, 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 shatter. So, the skyscraper scattered shattered into atomized Spaß. The island, its inner unattainability extolled, had swallowed through the despair of its many challengers. Long had it proudly eluded mankind's intellect. Yet now, as a mist bemoaned its demise, in the sky the icy canopy crumbled. The snark-hunting bullet jumped over the moon. Its throes of death sounded like the roaring sea, vibrating across this fairy tale land. The battle was over. The thick fog dissipated and the shattered ice melted away before it hit the ground. A lethal bullet unseated the Night King from his throne, affording him no time to grieve his loss. The oil of the moon, the untouched flat snark. The dreamscape that had begun with its resurrection ended with its demise, drawing a close to the nightmare. Okay. Kann man so sagen, vielleicht, aber hey, du hast es geschafft. Flat on her back, Orko looked up at the night sky. She lay there perfectly still, not able to move a single finger. When she tried, the whole body screamed out in agony. She was completely empty of magical energy, and her magic quest hadn't come to a halt. She estimated that it would likely require a whole day to recover all of her bodily functions. Sadly, all she could really do in that moment was take a breath. At least her chest was swelling with pride. She had gone toe-to-toe with a fairy-tale monster and had emerged victorious. The battlefield conditions had favored her, it was true, but there was no denying that Orko had come a long way in the last 6 months.
それはそれとして、アリスには謝っとかないと。黒いって壊したらそれっきりだものね。
Flatsnack would never again return to this world. It was an insanely rare item, so invaluable that it would have been impossible to price it for auction at the association in London. Orko had sent Alice's priceless treasure to oblivion. Needless to say, things had gotten more than a little out of hand.
まあ。
They had both agreed to the fact Alice probably would not complain. Even if she was furious, she would never be so undignified as to show it. The second Orko relaxed, her fatigue finally caught up with her. She did everything in her power to fight off the overwhelming drowsiness. Aside from a few minor internal injuries, her body was miraculously unscathed. She felt like she could probably stand up and dust herself off after a bit of rest. The golden moon continued to burn in the night sky.
正体は油だものね。そりゃいつまでも燃え。
Orko's blurry eyes went wide in astonishment. She was still unable to lift a finger.
スナークを見つけたベイカーも最後は一緒に消えるんだっけ。She sighed in resignation. Orko accepted that her final stand had left her with only 10 seconds before she burned to ash too.
Elsewhere, just a short moment prior. Buffeted by a strong wind atop the roller coaster, Cedric gravely peered down at the ground. All he could muster was a single murmur. He could see Aoko on top of some drawing on the ground and... In the distance, there was something familiar in the direction of the ruined house mirrors. Shoto's job to throw Aoko's hair from a great height was complete. While not the most impressive of tasks, it was absolutely a matter of life or death. And to top it all off, just thinking about how he was going to get back down to the ground was making him dizzy. He had experienced more than enough trouble for one day. He was flustered as he stood atop the swaying bridge. A sky suddenly appeared in the sky above. On the ground he could see a circling blue light with Aoko Aozaki in the middle of it. And one more thing. From an angle that only Sochi could see, a shadow stalked Aoko while she challenged the moon. It was sharp like a person missing the lower half of its body. The disembodied torso slowly clawed its way toward Aoko. They were still over 600 feet apart. Unfortunately for Aoko, she completely failed to notice it approaching from behind. The puppet. He was sure of what it was now. There was only one thing in the pack that would chase Aoko and not him, the puppet. Probably not. His mind ran in circles. It was a perfectly reasonable reaction. Any grip on reality might have had left was long lost when Aoko started firing beams of light at the monstrous moon. Aoko's mercilessly fire buffeted the roller coaster like a storm. Just staying out, this was almost enough for him to be thrown off and killed. At any rate, Soju couldn't fathom the situation. Should he head back to the entrance of the roller coaster and warn Aoko about the incoming threat? No, there was no way he would make it in time. And to make matters worse, there was a horde of Brett down there waiting for him. And it may very well have been the case that Aoko was already aware of the puppet and would take it out as soon as it got closer. If she was, Soju was sure he would only be in the way. It did not seem like there was anything he could do to help. And beyond that, Aoko was not only the only one in danger, he was in quite a predicament himself. You can't go home again. The road home was never safe as one thought. It was true, here, as it had been in the mountains. The path he was on was no exception. As risky as the ascent had been, it was even more dangerous to go back down. This was no time to be worrying about others. His shaking legs reminded him that only 200 feet separated him from death. His head was pounding. This was reckless and stupid. Having been raised in the mountains, he was more sensitive to danger than anyone raised in the city, and just thinking about what he was about to do made his throat slice up. There was only one thing he could say for sure. With a sobbing shout, Soju started making his way down the untreaded frame of the roller coaster. Okay, das ist aber mal mega gefährlich. His race toward death accelerated. He never meant to speed up, but the downward slope propelled him forward. It was too late for regrets. Now that... Oh, was für ein geiles Bild. Now that he was running, he had no choice but to go even faster. And time was not on his side. He would never make it in time if he took the long way down. Never mind the bread men guarding the exits of the roller coaster. With the exits blocked, the outcome would be the same whether he went slowly or quickly. There was no reason to rush to his death as desperately as he did. He What if it was futile? Cedric cleared the doubts from his mind. He turned his attention to what he could do. Keep his footing and try to arrive at the bottom as quickly as he could.
間違えるな。今大事なのは間に合うとか助けられるとかそういう結果の話じゃなくて。
He had no idea what impulses were driving his stiff limbs. He just focused on the moment, pushing past the fear and the cold logic. At his core, he was the kind of person to deal with problems head on. There would be time to think about the consequences later. But hesitation was not his only obstacle. It was possible hindrance appeared at a time when not focusing on the track would mean certain death. Sojo sensed something wrong with the egg he had been so steadily observing out of one eye. Something had changed, and at that very moment he realized it. Sojo stumbled and instinctively caught himself. It was a miracle he had not fallen. Descending a roller coaster on foot was an act of suicide. The egg stayed right by his side, so close it was like it would collide with him. Though he was trying not to look at it, he could not help but feel uneasy. That the door-like decoration in its center was gradually opening. Across this rotten situation. And yet he refused to slow down. He went even faster, glaring at the egg on his side. Sojo was baffled to find that he was smiling. Perhaps it had something to do with Aoko's charm. Sojo could not tell one way or the other. He could still feel Aoko's fingers on his skin. The trust and expectation she had placed on him was etched into his heart. But what spurred him on was something entirely different. This all stemmed from a much deeper problem. It was something inside him that he could not understand at the time, but would eventually come to terms with one day. He carefully judged the distance as he ran down the track of death. But the distance between what? That went without saying. It was the distance between himself and the one thing that could save his life. He told himself he was going to do it, and over like a mantra. Sojo could not believe himself. What he was about to do was incredibly stupid. But what is stupid when smart is not an option? Admits it all. He laughed at how pointless such self-reflection was now. Temporary confusion, a psychological thrill ride. Both had laid his soul bare. What really mattered in life? The answer to that question was simple. His primitive values did not care success or reward. All he wanted was to live the way he wanted. It wasn't an obligation to the people around him. His desire to live in his way was his and his alone. If the egg had been equipped with a vocal function, it would have gasped in shock at what happened next. The boy who had only tried to escape until this one suddenly shifted his weight. He pointed his feet outward instead of inward, and as the way he crouched ever so slightly to maintain momentum and gazed at the floating egg. He soared through the sky. It was a flight that lasted a mere 1/2 second. A cordless bungee jump from 100 feet above. His destination, the egg. The only thing that would stop his fall, the giant flying egg. He shrieked, this time out of elation, as he desperately clung to the egg's surface, just earlier. The cold-blooded witch had told him that without fear, the top of the building would feel no different than a balance beam. This from the same witch that would have been left speechless had she witnessed the spectacle. It was one thing to be fearless and another to be reckless. What the boy did next would give her a headache in the days to come. Clinging to the egg, he shifted his gaze away from it. He felt the rapid descent. Sojo, focusing his half-shut eye on the ground, leaped off the egg. Once they were a few feet from the ground, then turned back to it, carefully to re-establish eye contact. Something so unbelievable so to Sojiro, the elevator and the department store and the mysterious floating egg were both just moving objects, virtually indistinguishable from one another.
よし、割れてない。食べ物を粗末にするのは良くないと思う。
And he landed near the plaza. The shortcut that almost cost him his life had paid off. Sojiro took off running the second his feet touched the ground. The puppet after Aoko was the only thing on his mind. He paid no mind to the moonlight in the sky. Nor to the egg which was furious about being used. And second, a ray from self-destructing and blasting fragments all over the place. Aoko's dumbfounded expression spurred Sojiro on. The curse was complete. The empty egg began to sing, its warning to let them know there was no escape. Shrapnel from the egg exploded through the air. The ode to Queen Alice that Alice had engraved into a dumpty quickly robbed him of his senses. He snapped back to the task at hand and ran to Aoko still lying on the ground. His legs moved as if they had a mind of their own, though he couldn't have stopped them anyway, since he could no longer feel them. Okay. Also die Puppe hat jetzt echt schon einiges mitgemacht, muss man sagen. The scrambled murder case. Piles of rubble became flowers of light blooming from the earth. The final curtain drew closed, and the defeated left to the battleground. Had Alice currently seen it happen, she would have been beside herself. The two had escaped by hair's breadth. The only person in a position to witness that rare mutual destruction was the girl who had been saved from it. The boy who had never stopped running paid it no mind. The safety of the girl in his arms meant infinitely more to him than the miraculous way in which he saved her. Ich würde sagen, tatsächlich an dem Punkt beende ich dann hier diese Folge. Passt einfach sehr gut als ein Folgenende. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao!